Episode 6. Let's see if we can get this body a little bit closer to finished.
1, 2, 3, 4!
So we finished last time with the pickups almost fitted and everything else on the pick guard kind of pretty much sorted out. Since then I've come back to this and I've adjusted the pickup routes. For the neck position, all I did was I drilled down in the little sections where the ears are just to accommodate the screws a little bit better. I didn't really see the need for any further routing there. And in the bridge pickup, I've literally just taken that down about another 8mm, so there's room under there for the screws. And also you might notice that I've actually swapped the knobs around because I had them backwards. The Telecaster knob is for the volume and the kind of witch hat one is for the tone. So that's now correct. A few people have mentioned in the comments about the poker chip on the switch. There will be one. I haven't got it yet. It is on order, so that is on the way. Hopefully will be with us very soon. So with that done, I can now start to kind of take this all off again, because what I want to do in this episode is try and get the electrics sorted out. Now, it's actually going to be relatively straightforward. It's not a complicated setup on this one. I'll get the pick guard off and we can have a look at it. So we can pull that out, get these wires pulled back through, and get the body out of the way for the time being. And we can start to look at least to getting the controls all wired together. And this is the wiring diagram I've got, and it is actually kind of very straightforward. It is literally the pickups feed into the switch goes to the volume pot, then kind of branches off to the tone pot. We've got a capacitor on there, and then from the volume pot we go to output, and there's a bunch of grounds. Pretty standard, straightforward wiring. However, if I was going to be absolutely 100% accurate to the original guitar, this is the wiring diagram I would use, which is the bridge pickup straight direct to the output jack with nothing in between it. However, I've just paid well over £100 for this mini humbucker, and I'm not going to just have it sat there as decoration. So in my guitar, this will be wired in and it will be working. There is, however, one additional kind of adaptation I am thinking of, and that is to do with the way that the wiring runs for the pickups. At present, I've got a couple of holes drilled through into the control cavity, which is the kind of standard way of doing it. But what I'm thinking of is I might actually route a couple of channels in the top through to there. Only quite shallow, but just enough space for the wires to go, and that means I'll be able to pretty much have the entire pick guard wired up independently. So I could wire the pickups straight into the switch and the pots on the back of here, and then when I need to fit it, I can just kind of lay the wires into those little recesses and then screw the pick guard down, which means I'd be able to remove the pick guard to work on it without unsoldering the pickups. I might have to kind of do something with the bridge ground, but that would be the only one. Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Is that a step too far away from the original? I think it's a really good idea, because if I was playing this guitar regularly, gigging it, it was going to need a little bit of maintenance now and again. The ability to just whip the whole scratch plate off without having to mess about with anything else, for me, would be a real bonus. But I think we need to bear something in mind here, and that is I have no idea what the original looks like under the scratch plate. We know from looking at photographs of unmolested Ventures 2 model guitars that they didn't have this pickup configuration at all. They had what appear to be kind of P90 sized pickups. So at least the pickup routes were nothing at all like I've done here. This is just simply to fit the pickups that we know are going to go into it. And from that perspective, I think we could be justified in saying a couple of little routes here and there to accommodate the wires. It's perfectly acceptable. It might even be the case that they exist on the original guitar, because to all intents and purposes, it's a good idea and it would make maintenance a lot easier. Having said that, looking at the original guitar, doesn't look like maintenance was much of a priority. But anyway, it's a possibility. So let me know what you think about that in the comments. And while you're down there, if you're enjoying this, don't forget to hit that like button, and a subscription would also be absolutely amazing. It's free, but it does help the channel no end. Anyway, let's get on to that wiring. And I'm going to start off with the switch. It just seems kind of an obvious place for me. Now, if you're not familiar with these toggle switches, there's 4 connections on them. You've got one, which is this one here, which is your ground. You've got 2 lugs here, which are your inputs. And then you've got these 2 in the middle. So technically there's 5, but in this configuration, these are going to be joined together. So that will just give us 4, which will be your output. And basically ground wire will go to the rest of the grounds, each pickup to one of these, and then this one will go out to the volume pot. And it's quite easy to demonstrate how this works. If I just get the multimeter attached to it, and I've got this set up onto the 200 ohms range, so it will register even the kind of slightest little bit of resistance. At the moment I've got the switch in the middle position, so both of these lugs will give me a bit of resistance, so there's continuity there, which means in this position the signal from both of these inputs will be fed to the output back to the volume pot. Now if I put the switch in the up position, we have a continuity there, but nothing on this one, which means only the input from this pickup will go to the volume, and vice versa. Switch in the down position, nothing there, and we have continuity through to that one. So if you're ever kind of stuck how to wire one of these up, that is basically how you do it. But as I've said previously, in this instance, all we're going to do is we're going to be putting the output and the ground wire on here. As it stands, I'll be wiring up the pickups separately once everything's kind of a bit more put together. And just for the sake of neatness, I'm actually going to use some of this kind of multi-core cable just to get everything back from the switch to the volume pot. So I'll strip some of this down and we can get soldering. Now this is actually 4-core, and it's got a braided kind of ground around it as well. But I'm not going to use that. I'm only going to use these 2 wires here. So I've got the black and the white ones. And just for a change, I thought I'm going to try using a little bit of this flux as well on this one. Not something I've used before, but I've been assured it will actually make things work a lot better for me. So we shall give this a try. That flux seems to have done quite a nice job there. I just need to trim this back. And then we'll move up to the pots, the first one being the volume pot. And the first thing we need to do is attach this lug to ground. And we'll also use this as kind of where we're going to be putting some of our other ground wires as well. Starting with this one. And I've got to say, I really like the way that this flux is working. It gives you a really nice, clean blob of solder. And I'm just going to clean that off with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and a cotton bud. We can get this onto the volume pot. And because these are actually so close together, I'm not going to even bother with a bit of wire. I'm going to bend this one down until it touches that. I'm literally just going to solder the two together. Some people might not approve of that. I think it makes sense because there's only actually one joint there now, not two. So next up is our Super Mojo tone capacitor. Now this is actually quite a chunky monkey, and I'm kind of wondering where I'm going to put it so that we can still kind of get everything into the control cavity. I actually think that somewhere there is probably my best bet, but that does leave me issues with how I'm going to get it kind of wired in. So I think the first thing I'll do is I'm going to get some heat shrink just so I can insulate this leg, so I'm not going to get any problems. I'm not sure if I should be using this flux on everything or not, but it seems to be working okay, so we'll give it a bash. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the fumes though. And then this leg just goes to the top of the pot. Which only now really leaves us a couple of things to do, for the time being anyway, and that is to get this wire onto this central lug here and run that round to the output, and then we need a ground to the output and the ground between the two pots. So we'll start with this output wire. and then just a couple of short lengths. To connect all the grounds up. And that, at least for the time being, is all of the soldering done. All we need to do is obviously connect the 2 pickups to the switch and add in the grounds. But to all intents and purposes, I think that's the vast majority of it done. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just cleaning up, getting rid of any of this kind of excess flux that might be knocking around. I'm actually very pleased with the way that that's worked, because it has left the solder joints looking kind of very nice and clean. So yeah, that's good. And then, just as we did previously, we can actually test this. If I just stick one lead onto there, we're in the middle position, so I should get continuity through to the live on the output, which I've got. If I take it to the down position, we should still get that, which we have. And then if I go to the up position, nothing. And then if I swap it round, we should get the reverse. So we've got continuity there, continuity in the middle position, and nothing in the down position. So at least in terms of continuity, that's all working. So happy days, we can move on to the next bit. All in all, I'm very happy with the results I've got from using this flux, especially where I've had to solder onto the pots. It's really made that flow nicely, which is often a little bit of a challenge because the bulk of the pot acts as a heatsink and stops things from kind of soldering as well as they might. So I'm very, very happy with that. And if anyone's interested, this is the stuff I used, just got it off Amazon. So there we have it, all wired up and back in position, and it all still fits absolutely brilliantly, which is great. Now you might be thinking that the next logical step to take on this is to get the bridge and the tailpiece fitted, and then all the jobs on the body are done and we can start to think about getting it ready for paint. However, with this being a one-off, I am not entirely sure where that bridge needs to go. And looking at the bridge, there isn't a huge amount of adjustment on these saddles, and it could potentially be the case that if I got this out of position enough, I would never be able to get it to intonate properly, and that would be an absolute disaster. So I'm not going to fit the bridge until I've got a position for my nut down the other end of the neck, and I can't do that until I've got at least the start of the neck and the fretboard underway. So in the next episode, we're going to put this to one side. We're going to break out that lump of maple that we've got for the neck. We're going to find some rosewood, make a fretboard from that, and we'll start to get all of that underway. But that's obviously going to be for the next episode. We're kind of run out of time now. So as always, don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.